The ones who get it done.
WGNS, Murfreesboro, Smyrna. We're the Good Neighbor Network. FM 101.9 and AM 1450, Murfreesboro. FM 100.5, Smyrna. Audio and video streaming at WGNSradio.com. This is the Roundtable. A look at the news, views, politics, and people that are shaping Rutherford County.
Welcome in. It's a Wednesday on the Roundtable, and glad to have you with us. Chip Walters here from Exit Realty, Bob Lamb & Associates, and the Blue Raider Network. And it is like you're in a terrarium outside this morning, in case you've not ventured outside of your house. I'm sure all of your windows are probably fogged up because it's hot outside. We've had a good bit of rain the last 72 hours and broke what was kind of a little mini drought here in the mid-state, but we're certainly welcoming the rain. The grass is less crunchy and has greened back up, so that's all good news. And heading down the home stretch of summertime, getting ready for what I guess next week or here in a couple of days, the schools are going to be reporting in the county and in the city, so it is just about that time. But it's also a great time of the year to kind of get a little political perspective and a nonpartisan political perspective. I'll put that out there right at the beginning. And Kent Syler is here today, now a political science professor at MTSU. And Kent, there's nothing going on in your world, right?
It's been a quiet summer, hasn't it? Yeah, I thought about joking with my students and said, I've been out of town for a while. Anything happen?
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah, it's been pretty wild.
Well, going into, I would imagine in the political science world of when you're getting ready to teach classes and things like that when you're going into a presidential election year, that it kind of takes on a whole new air about it because there's such seminal moments within our history.
Yeah, and presidential elections, whether you're studying it or a voter, it's what fires everyone up. I mean, that's when our voter turnout goes way up, and there are a lot of people who that's the only time they go vote.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an amazing excuse me. It's an amazing time to teach about it, to study it, and to do all those things.
Yeah. For folks who a lot of you who are listening know Kent and know a lot of his history, but kind of give folks a little bit of your background of how you caught the political bug. Yeah. And ended up for a long time in Washington with Bart Gordon and other things that you've done.
Yeah, Chip started at MTSU.
Yeah,
I came here in '76 from Winchester.
That's right. You are a Franklin County.
Yeah. Got involved in student government. Was eventually ASB president. I met another ASB president who was a few years older than me, named Bart Gordon. And Bart hired me right out of school to work for him when he was chair of the Tennessee Democratic Party. We did that 2 years. Mm-hmm. Al Gore decided to run for Howard Baker's seat. When Howard Baker retired, we ran for that seat and kept it 26 years. And then when we quit that in 2011, I had started teaching at MTSU as an adjunct in 2002. And I had loved it, and I was lucky enough to be hired full time. So,
wow, if 26 years for Bart in Congress, that means he had to go through 13 elections.
13 elections.
Wow.
Yeah, some of them were brutal. We had in '92 we had Marsha Blackburn run against us. In '94 we had Steve Gill, who almost beat us, 2,100 votes. And then
over a full
district,
yeah,
that's like 0.5%. And we won by, and then we had a rematch with him in '96, and that was a different political year, and I think we won by around 35,000. But those were tough. I mean, you were worn out and plus my wife and I were having our children about that time, so that's how I lost my hair.
Yeah, that combination of all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're going to dive into the events of the last few weeks in particular here shortly and get Kent's take on it. But when you look back at those 26 years that you all spent with Bart Gordon in Congress and in Washington, kind of talk about the tenor of how things were then as opposed to what we're seeing now, because I've been I've had some other guests and we've talked about this same kind of topic on state government and how things are so different now.
Yeah.
But kind of give us an idea of what it was like in those years during the 80s and the early 90s when this was happening.
Yeah, if you look at the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s, there was overall pretty healthy debate. People disagreed, but we would have open meetings everywhere, invite everybody in the district, go county by county, city by city. Mm-hmm. People would come out and we would have a forum, a town hall meeting, and people would get up and politely discuss their views. Have you noticed that no one's having those anymore?
Right.
Because they can't. They just turn into slugfests. And so that's, really something that we've lost. But the tenor for all those years was, you could see it getting a little tougher, but it was reasonable. Toward the time we retired, we had an open meeting over in Tucker Theater on the Affordable Care Act. And no one else was doing them, and they bust them in from everywhere. And it was crazy. It was, it was yelling. And we kept it pretty good. Andrew Ottman with the News Journal at that time emceed it. But it was kind of getting close. You could see we were starting to lose that civility that allowed us to discuss issues.
Yeah. And I remember growing up, I grew up in Murray County, and obviously districts have been gerrymandered and changed and all of that since those days in the 70s and 80s. But I remember the day when it didn't matter what little town, whether you were in Murfreesboro or Tullahoma, Shelbyville, Manchester, whoever the local congressman had a field office in a little storefront. Yep. And of course, Congressman Gordon had his main office here in Murfreesboro.
Square,
But again, it was not uncommon if you happen to walk in there, the congressman might be there.
Yeah.
And you could actually have an audience there and be able to do that.
Yeah, the door was always unlocked and open like a business, and people would have an issue or want to talk, they'd drop in. Most of those places are gone now, and if they are around, the doors are locked. And I had a student who interned, and because the calls are so hostile now, most of them are letting their phones go to voicemail, and then they answer and weed out the ones that are calling. So it's really we've all got to do a better job.
Yeah, I think Congressman Desjardins still has an office here on West Main, but again, I'm sure that, like you said, the door is probably locked. What do you think turned that? Was it? Can we point and blame social media for a lot of it, or was it starting to take a turn before that? Because you think about, okay, the Reagan years were pretty civil, and then you go through. I mean, every presidency has its own drama, no matter whichever party. But it didn't take a real nasty turn until sometime after that.
It was, and worked for a Democrat, and we try to keep this nonpartisan. But I'm going to blame Newt Gingrich for some of this. But there's plenty of blame to go around because the '94 race, Newt kind of said, "Let's just burn this place down."
Yeah, you're right.
And then it was already starting to get a little rough, though, on both sides. And then both sides became more and more shrill. And then you got into people had such a bad attitude about Washington because all the negative advertising. And I was wanting to run some positive ads at one point talking about things that Bart had done toward the end, when we had a campaign. And the pollster and the media person said, "Ken, you can't put that up. Everybody's in a bad mood. Nobody believes anything positive." So you can see that slippery slope because overall government works pretty well. And you talked about state and local. Washington has kind of sucked all the air out of the room. Your state and local governments, and we've got an important election next week. Mm-hmm. Those public servants, impact our lives.
Much more.
Yeah. And we really need to give them the attention and support and understand how important they are and how important it is to have people willing to do those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, and the biggest issues typically on your plate at your home, and I'm talking to everybody that's out there listening. It's okay. What are my property taxes going to be? Yeah. Is my garbage getting picked up? Yep. How are the roads out in front of my house? That has nothing to do with Washington.
No.
That is, and the old phrase is all politics are local, but it's not 100%. But the most important thing is putting in people and trust at your local level, and then to the next degree on a state level from the state house. And we've got very important elections going on, not only for city council, county commission, but also the state house has some very competitive races going on in our county right now.
They do some very good races. Bart had a saying, it is not original with him, but the most important road in the county is the one in front of your house.
Exactly.
And that kind of taught us, too, even on a federal level, whatever is impacting their lives, whether it be federal or local, that's the most important issue to them. Mm-hmm. And we always had a constituent service group and good staff that whatever the issue was when they came in, whether it's a federal, local, we would find a way to get them an answer on it.
Yeah, and I think and I think that's one of the things that even today, people in this community, whether they were pro Bart Gordon or anti Bart Gordon, they will always tell you that if I raised an issue or had a question, I got an answer and got a reply. And I think that's something that your whole group could be very proud of at the time.
They did. We had a very, very good group, and it started with Bart, but, it's customer service, and, they're paying for the office, and we always wanted to be responsive.
Yep, and tell folks who may not remember, there were a couple of key committees that he was on that I think still have had some of the actions that he was able to take have had lasting impacts.
Yeah, he rose, the last Tennessean to do it in many, many years, but he rose to chair of the science committee. So
and that's where NASA came under that. NASA, that was a big deal.
Yeah, a lot of the science agencies, health agencies, he and Lamar Alexander, one of the last bills he passed was the America Competes Act to try to get us more competitive math, science, and those things. So he did that. He was on Commerce for a long time, which dealt with a lot of important, corporate issues. So,
I mean, I guess when you think about the science committee, is that that has now all turned into STEM, and there's been fortunately there's been a new initiative of wanting to make sure people are being educated in science, technology, and math, and those kind of things, and I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah, it does help us, and we're still working on it as a country to be able to better compete on the world, the world market.
We talked about the local issues and how much when you deal with your students in political science classes at MTSU, do you all I mean, it's easy to use your lecture time and syllabus space for the big picture things because there's so much information about it. How much do you challenge them to dig into the more local politics and local races, things like that?
We quite a bit, and we talk about, we have local officials in, and I've said often to class what I said earlier about the importance of that. And I've got former students now. I've got one of my campaign management and intro students is now in the legislature. One of them's on the city council, and I've got them in a lot of different things that, and there's a campaign management class I teach where we divide the room up. This first class I ever taught there. We let them divide themselves up, come up with their own personas, and they run a campaign against each other from the entire operation. And we intersect with Andrew Ottman's journalism class,
right?
And they cover it. So they have to deal with reporters, and so then they do a debate. So it's really they get a really good hands-on experience there.
And you've done this long enough now that I would imagine you hear teachers talk about how fulfilling it is when one of their students goes in to be a teacher and they were inspired by that, or coaches have an athlete that wants to be a coach. And I would imagine that in the political science world, if you have lit a flame with students who have come through your class, that they feel the need to and the calling to go into public service, that has to be very satisfying on your part.
It is, Chip. And I just noted Kip Capley, who is the state rep down in Murray County and some of that area. He's now the youngest. He was in the class. He's a Republican down in that area, and he's the youngest member of the legislature. And he came through the class and did some things. And so I was texting with him about coming back and talking to the students, which he said he would just a few days ago.
Well, in what is he now? Late 20s?
He's I think in the 26-ish or 27. Yeah, he's. But yeah, it's mid to late 20s.
Yeah, crazy. I mean,
I had him at 18. Yeah,
and I don't know. Maybe did he find the right district or what? or what?
Well, that always works. Yeah, it's part of politics is that.
Well, before we get to our break, and that's one of the things that we have seen in our area. Well, and when I say our area, the mid-state area, is how districts have changed since. Well, like for instance, the district that we're in here now. Scott Desjardins is the congressman. That district has a much different footprint than the district when Bart was the congressman.
It does, yeah, and it every 10 years census and then things get carved up, and they're carved up by the legislators, and whoever's in charge gets to carve them the way they want. And so they do change, and a lot of it was necessitated in this area because the growth has been so fast.
Yeah.
So even if you don't pick up more seats, they've got to get every district back to par, back to the same number every 10 years. And if you've got an area that's just exploding, and then you've got a rural area that maybe is not growing, you got to mix things up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ken Syler is our guest today. After the break, we're going to dive into the craziness of the last 2 weeks in the presidential election and all the things that have happened and get his take on it. And that's this morning here on the Wednesday Roundtable on WGNS.
When the unexpected happens, fire, water, or storm damage, Farrah Construction can help. Farrah Construction is also there to help when a car slams through the wall, and that seems to happen more often these days. I'm Ron Hall. Let our family at Farrah Construction help you. Call Farrah Construction and we'll board up, put down tarps, secure your home or business until the insurance coverage is approved. I'm Ron Hall. Shop local. Let our family business help you. Farrah Construction Company.
As a leader in environmental services, sustainability is deeply integrated into our business model. At Middle Point Landfill, we are environmentalists at heart. We use a cutting-edge technology in combination with our deep experience in recycling and waste services to protect our environment and our neighbors. That's our job, and that's our promise. This is Mike Klassen with Middle Point Landfill. We invite you to learn more about us at middlepointlandfill.com. Republic Services. We are sustainability in action.
You don't have hot dogs or apple pie or no Chevrolet to drive, but we have some hickory smoked wings you're just dying to try. You'll try them, you'll like them, you'll give some to a friend. So on a dare, just stop on by and bring in a friend. Slick Pig Barbecue, 1920 East Main.
Hi, this is Chip Walters with Exit Realty Bob Lamb and Associates. You might know me as the voice of the Blue Raiders, but I want to be your trusted advisor in real estate. Whether you're buying or selling, it's time to choose Chip. Do you have a growing family and need to upsize? Are you an empty nester now and need to downsize? Are you thinking of selling your current home but just worried you can't find something else? Well, it's time to choose Chip. I'm looking to be your trusted advisor in real estate. I'm Chip Walters with Exit Realty Bob Lamb and Associates.
Families love Adams Place.
My daughter kept telling me that she wanted me to come to Adams Place. And I came here to look at the rooms. I decided to stay. And I'm not one bit sorry because I've been very well taken care of. And I have been very happy that I did come to Adams Place.
Hi, this is Terry Deal at Adams Place. Call me for more information about Adams Place. Phone 615-904-9111. Adams Place.
This is Good Neighbor Events with Bart Walker. Brought to you by the law offices of John Day and AmeriCare Pest Control.
I've got pests.
AmeriCare is Rutherford County's #1 choice in pest control, and it's simple to see why. After calling 893-7111, their staff came to my house 8 years ago when I had an insect problem. They looked at the situation, showed me the areas and what they'd recommend to resolve the problem. After treatment and with quarterly checks, I'm bug, critter, and creepy crawly free. Thanks, AmeriCare.
Call the best of the best to get rid of your pest.
AmeriCare, 893-7111.
For over 77 years, you've depended on WGNS to let you know what's happening, and you still can. Take advantage of early voting. It continues through this Saturday. Don't let it slip away. Get out and vote. It's also the final week for the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Department's Movies Under the Stars. This is the final week. It's also the weekend to meet Aaron Chestnut at the Linebaugh Library. Aaron is the local author of the book Fight for Me. It's about a girl who thinks that she's nothing and a boy who knows that she is everything. Fight for Me, the local author book signing, this Saturday from 10 until 2 at the Linebaugh Public Library. That's at 105 West Vine Street in Uptown Murfreesboro this Saturday. And this is the tax-free back-to-school weekend. Tennessee sales tax-free this weekend. Oh, and once again, we remind you this is the final weekend to take advantage of early voting. That continues through Saturday. Get out and vote. And for more Good Neighbor events, check our website, WGNSradio.com.
Rutherford weather.
Few scattered showers and storms at times this afternoon with cloudy skies, a high in the mid-80s. Tonight, chance for storms, a low 70. Thursday, chance for storms, a high of 87. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki on News Radio WGNS.
Currently, it's 75.
Broadcasting from the Middle Tennessee Electric Studios. MTE serves members with more than just electricity. Their community outreach team works with schools, parents, and students to provide engaging and unique learning experiences. MTE serving to make life better since 1936.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Welcome back to the Wednesday Roundtable. Chip Walters here, along with Kent Syler, political science professor at MTSU, and we were kind of spitballing a lot of stuff during that opening segment. But one of the reasons I wanted to get Kent in today is to kind of give a local perspective on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks in this presidential election cycle. You've had an assassination attempt.
Yeah.
You've had a sitting president decide not to run. And from a historical perspective, both of those huge events are they're not without precedent. We've seen it before, but it's been a long time for both.
It has, and you've also this all goes back really to the debate.
Right.
I mean, we had an incredibly historically consequential presidential debate, and it was one where President Biden performed so poorly that it ended up ending his political career. And so that is earth-shattering in itself to start the debate, to have a debate lead to that, and then to eventually, several weeks later, have him step down as the nominee, someone who already has the nomination, wrapped up. We go back to 68.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say the last time that happened was President Johnson.
Yeah, and Johnson didn't go through the primary process.
He made the announcement in late March.
Yeah, he got so basically Eugene McCarthy, who's running on a peace plank on the Democratic side, did embarrassingly well in the New Hampshire primary, and so that started Johnson down the road of taking himself out. And of course, then you had Robert Kennedy, later assassinated during that term, and during that race. But yeah, you go back a ways to see something as wild as it's happening right now, and so suddenly we have delegates pledged to Vice President Harris, who will, be the Democratic nominee.
Yeah,
and changes the race pretty much.
Yeah. To back up just a little bit, let's kind of look at each of those those three events. The debate, and it was to me, it was not like that former President Trump did exceedingly well, but it was the Biden campaign who actually set the rules apparently for that debate, did perform just very poorly.
Yeah, it was. I watched, I think, every moment of it.
Right,
and I was.
Well, that's your job.
Yeah, that is true. It is kind of what I do, isn't it? So I watched the entire thing, but I don't know that I could tell you very much at all of what Donald Trump said.
Right.
Because I was so absolutely overwhelmed with how poorly Biden was doing. I do remember the two of them arguing about golf at the end.
Yeah.
But it was that shocking of a performance. And you knew something was going to change with that.
Yeah. And then, in a week later, you have former President Trump in Pennsylvania and you have an assassination attempt, which, fortunately for him was not any worse than it was, obviously, but it emboldened him and his supporters, and which if he needed any more fuel going into the Republican convention, that set of events certainly set him up.
It did, and you saw. So you had a historic debate, followed by all those iconic photos of him, with the bloody face and the fist, and
with the flag in the background.
Yeah, there were, and
there's some Pulitzer Prize winning photos that were taken of that day.
Definitely, and I was, I was home watching that, and I told my wife Linnell, I said, look at these kind of in real time as those still pictures started. I said, these are historic. I mean, these pictures are going to be around, for forever. And so you had that happen. So we've had two big events.
You had that, and then you go from there. That he came out so strong, and then President Biden. Obviously there's still a hangover from the debate that's going on, and then you have President Trump have a very successful convention along with the assassination attempt, and then the president contracts COVID a third time.
Yeah.
And so there was a perfect storm of negative things happening in his world that really he was left with no choice.
Yeah, and he was the money dried up. He was being pretty well pushed out by the party who had decided we can't win this.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talked about, when I was talking about 2016, and people were asking me, well, are people going to unite behind Trump? I'd say, well, the great uniter is Hillary Clinton. So are people going to, this time,
whether they unite behind her or against her, one of the two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, are they going to, the great uniter of Republicans.
Right.
The great uniter of Democrats is Donald Trump.
Right.
So Democrats were less looking for a particular person than someone they thought could win.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what has transpired. And suddenly, at least there's a lot. We don't know how any of the, I've given up trying to predict more than a week ahead on this. But, it looks like it's going to be a much more competitive, much more interesting race.
Well, and there will be another debate that is already on the schedule, which appears now will be the vice president, Kamala Harris, against Donald Trump, which that will, in my opinion, is going to take have a completely different dynamic because, just the juxtaposition of the two candidates is way different now as far as who will have the opportunity to be the aggressor, all of that. And I think in our area of the country, you don't know a ton about Kamala Harris, whereas folks in the West Coast may. But she appears here in the first few days to be a very what will be at least a very dynamic candidate. She knows how to raise money, and that has become certainly to the forefront. I mean, that has been a story in itself of how much money has been raised since President Biden got out, and she has become the standard bearer.
Yeah, I think it's kind of back to what I was talking about a minute ago. It's that eagerness on the Democratic side to stop Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So that money's going to flow. And you mentioned a good point on we don't know a lot about her.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of voters don't know a lot about her. That's the race right now. Is she is going to try to define herself before the Trump campaign can define her. Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's kind of the competition that's going on right now.
And so as this moves along, talk a little bit about how delegates work and because now the delegates that had been pledged to President Biden. When he drops out of the race, basically they become free agents, correct?
Yeah, I think a lot of this delegate stuff it changes very often, and a lot of it's different state to state on how they're selected. But by and large, what I was reading yesterday is she already has enough pledged, and I think a candidate can release them. There may be some pro forma vote because they're required to vote on the first round, but if they do, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So they'll figure out the thing, and honestly, these things are controlled by the parties. And if they can't figure out a clean way to do it, they'll figure out another one. They can literally make the rules.
Right, and I think I was watching something, and even before they go to the convention, there's going to be and it's
virtual. I think a virtual
ballot. I think, and so they'll have a really good idea at that point. In your tenure, did you ever go to a political to the Democratic convention?
I did.
What was that like?
So I was 2000 L.A. when Gore was elected. Bart spoke at that one. 2004 in Boston. 1992 in New York with Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Then 2000 L.A., Boston in 2004, and then Denver with Obama. The Denver one you will find the most interesting because usually, they're at the basketball arenas, Staples
Right.
Center, Madison Square Garden,
Right.
With those type things. Obama did his final night at Mile High State with the Broncos.
At the Broncos football stadium, that's right.
And I was down with the Tennessee delegation on the field. So I got to look around like a pro athlete and see a packed, football stadium. But the entire political world comes together, and both as far as the lobbyists, they go to both conventions.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the stuff going on inside the arena, but you've got this entire other world going on outside.
The spin world.
The spin world and all the interest groups and all those things. We would go to a lot of science stuff.
Right.
And because everybody gets there. And so they're very fascinating.
Now, and typically in my lifetime, a lot of times a star in the political world will really have their launch pad because of a speaking opportunity at a convention.
Yep.
And, you think about Rudy Giuliani being one who I remember really jumped out there. In your time of going, who were the top 2 or 3 speakers that really captured you and you said, man, I didn't know a whole lot about them, but man, they are, they really, set something on fire.
That one's easy.
Yeah.
Barack Obama in 2004 in Boston, and I've got a quick story about that.
Sure.
So Phil Bredesen was governor. He's a Harvard graduate, and so we walk out of a building at Harvard that he had for a reception. Well, the Chicago delegation was having an event right across the street. And their young senator, who was going to give the speech in a couple of days, had come out, and I think it may have been to smoke a cigarette.
Probably.
And I went and said hello to him with a friend of mine and just said hello real quickly, didn't hold him up, and said, we're looking forward to the speech. And then that's the only time I ever met Barack Obama. But then, then he, we never imagined at that moment that 4 years from then he was going to be president.
Yeah, that's, and you see that at each convention there will be somebody who is able to, catch the attention of the country because of a speech, and I think it'll be interesting now because Trump has chosen J.D. Vance, and he's a very good speaker. Very good speaker, and obviously he's been a writer with his book about hillbilly elegy, and so now it's kind of interesting. You have speaking of spin, there's a lot of questions. Is Andy Beshear going to be on the short list for Kamala Harris? Because Andy Beshear now is not claiming J.D. Vance as a Kentucky native. What is he said? That J.D. Vance is to Kentucky like my apologies, like Olive Garden is to Italy. So it's kind of interesting how everybody tries to do their positioning right now, and so anyway, we will kind of get some predictions as we get ready for a final break and a few other stories along the way with Kent Syler, political science professor at MTSU. Back with our final segment after this here on the Wednesday Roundtable on the Big G, WGNS.
It's summertime and it's time to do more outdoors. But do you feel out of energy, lacking motivation and mental focus? It could be low testosterone. Low T affects millions of men and it happens naturally. The solution? Testosterone replacement therapy at Low T Center. I literally walk in, they check the level, and then I find out where I stand today. Right now at Low T Center, they are offering a free initial test. If you're over 30, schedule that visit at lowtcenter.com today.
Offer till July 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
apply.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the third time in the last 2 years. I'm done with this.
Have you thought about My Computer Career? I've heard they can train you for a career in IT in just a few months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI. And you don't need prior training or experience. Now that's a recession-resistant career.
Wow, thanks. I'll check them out.
Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. mycomputercareer.edu. Financial aid is available for qualified students, including the GI Bill.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is Stan Vaught. I'm a lot like you, a husband, father, farmer, auctioneer, and community supporter. I'm now a candidate for school board in the last cases, Walter Hill, Milton, Leanna, Oakland, and Siegel communities. I believe in community schools, vocational education, and getting education back to the basics. I'd appreciate your support for school board.
Early voting going on now through July 27th. Election day is August 1st. Paid for by Stan Vaught for school board, Stan Vaught treasurer.
There's probably a brick mailbox made by LaGreen's Masonry near you. Look at the brick mailboxes on their website, lagreensmasonry.com. Family owned and operated. LaGreen's Masonry is A+ rated by the BBB.
At Bud's Tire Pros, we sell all major brands of tires, and we invite you to stop by today for that next set of tires. Or maybe you need us to check out your vehicle before you head out of town. We offer everything from brakes to batteries, alignments, and more. No appointments necessary, just stop on by.
I'm Allison Mitchell with Bud's Tire Pros. We're located on East Main Street, exactly 3 miles from the town square, 1 mile past Rutherford Boulevard. Visit us online at budstirepros.tn.com.
This is Kim Dunaway from Sunshine Nutrition Center. You hear me on Monday mornings at 7:20 talking about how to lead a healthier lifestyle. We carry supplements, personal care, and grocery items at both our Murfreesboro and Smyrna locations, family owned and operated since 1989.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Welcome back into the Roundtable. Kit Syler, the guest today, political science professor at MTSU, and again, if we could air what is talked about during the breaks, we would really have something going here. But one of the things, though, as soon as we went to break, you said, I think J.D. Vance spoke at MTSU, and Brian, in his way of jumping on Dr. Google over here, we did look it up, and J.D. Vance, his book Hillbilly Elegy, was the summer reading in the summer of 2017 for incoming freshmen. Freshmen and students at MTSU and at Convocation, which happens right at the beginning of the school year. He came and was the speaker, and at that point, nobody knew him as anything political. He was just an author.
With a very popular book. So it's cool that one of his early appearances was over at MTSU.
So there he is, and now he's on the ticket on the Republican side. Now let's talk a little bit about the ticket on the Democratic side, because we all have a really strong idea that it is going to be Kamala Harris. Now, from a historical perspective, she's not the first female to be a nominee, but she will be the first woman of color to be a nominee, and that it has its own significance.
And Asian, Asian.
Asian.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and it'll be, there's a lot of a lot of my courses are cross-listed with sociology because sociology is as much a part of politics as anything else right now. And psychology. Or psychiatry, one of the two. But I think it's going to fire up members of that community. And it's, it's funny, and with politics now, we talk about everything you shouldn't at the Thanksgiving table. It's race, it's everything from gender to race to religion. All of these things have something to do with it. So yeah, I think it's energized a lot of the Democratic base that Donald Trump had started to peel away a little bit. So we'll have to watch how that works out. But this race, Chip, is going to have more twists and turns. This isn't over. There's going to be, these surprises are not. We're not done with surprises. That's the only prediction I can make. But there's going to be things happen along the way that are going to probably keep shaking things up some direction or the other.
Kate, now with that being said, looking at it, let's say you're trying to strategize, Mr. Political Science Professor here, and you are advising her on who her running mate should be. Give me names of who will probably be considered, and what qualities does she need to look at from a, whether it's geographic, whether it's, where they are on the political spectrum, those kind of things. What in her from her standpoint would help her candidacy, because President Trump has already, picked someone that has a different background than him to help balance his ticket.
Yeah, you mentioned Andy Beshears.
Yeah.
And we've got several other governors. We've got North Carolina, Roy Cooper. You've got Shapiro up in
Minnesota. There's the
Pennsylvania.
And the Minnesota governor, too. I've seen
Minnesota, and then with Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. They all have some things in common, and governors are popular picks. I mean, we've elected a lot of them president over the last few years. I think the thing that hurts Beshears is that Kentucky is just not in play. Most of the others are from, and you could make the same argument about North Carolina, but when Pennsylvania's in play, Michigan's in play,
and if you get Pennsylvania, that whole Rust Belt is in play from Michigan to Ohio to Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Those are going to be very important.
Yeah, and Democrats can't win without carrying those states.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of that blue wall. So my guess is that it will be someone, they're all kind of philosophically alike.
Okay.
But they'll try to find someone who has some geographic advantage.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting how that plays out, and I would assume that we will know sooner rather than later.
I would imagine so. That seems to be the Republicans got a head start. I think the Democrats will. The big thing is the vetting process is very serious because you don't want, these people are going to come under incredible scrutiny, and you've got to vet them. Otherwise, you make a selection and you end up, it blows up on you, and you have to move on. You've got a big distraction and a positive turn to a negative.
It doesn't matter which side of the aisle. Is it fair to say that in this current climate that anybody that you would love to see run for office would have no interest in doing it simply because of what you just said?
Yeah, a lot of people want it. And we go back to our early discussion about local politics and state politics. We're losing a lot of good people who won't get involved because of how brutal it is and how nasty people can be to them. So we've all got to be, if we want good leaders, we've all got to work on being civil, whether we agree with them every time or not, and appreciate when they're trying to make a real effort.
Yep, and I go back to my friend Keel Hunt's book, Coup, and his other book, Across the Aisle, where he talks about how when Tennessee was the shining example of how bipartisan politics can work in a very positive way. Well, speaking of all of that, you had and this maybe all of us should listen to this. You had you did an honors lecture about good mental health, and I think we all might need a dose of that as we head toward November.
Yeah, that honors lecture series this year was on good mental health and things to do it, and most of it was very mental health oriented. But I was asked, Dr. Evans there asked me to come and talk about how to maintain your political mental health, which is one of the harder. I've done several of those. That was a tough one. But basically what I told them.
Yeah, let's give us the outline on that.
I took the food pyramid and up where we had fats and sweets in the very tip of things you shouldn't have too much of, I crossed it out and put politics.
Okay.
And politics, don't get me wrong, it's very, very important, but we don't need to be sitting around watching cable news hours a day because you remember this business that they are in media, their goal is to keep us charged up, to keep us aroused so that we keep punching buttons, reading, watching, and you can't just be stirred up all the time.
And one of the key words in social media that is the enemy of good political mental health is algorithms.
Yeah. Yeah, even when that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Even when you're trying to avoid them, they find you.
Yeah.
You don't have to go flip the TV on. It'll pop up because of so you've really there's a saying that politics should be like elevator music, playing in the background, doing its job, but not like a Metallica concert. That's kind of what we get now. But just politics is very important, but it should not consume our lives.
Yeah. Now, and I think that to put a bow on that is as distasteful as it can be from both sides at some point. The thing that we all need to remember is we all need to be involved. Whoever your choice is, whatever your affiliation, whatever is, and encourage others. If you're not registered, register. If you are registered, make sure if you haven't early voted in the local elections, you've got one coming up in next week. That the actual day at the polls will be coming up, so you need to take advantage of that. By the way, later on as we get closer to November, we'll have Alan Farley back on. But ruco.vote is the website. ruco.vote. Go there. You can see what the ballot is before you ever get to your polling place, and you need to do that. So to cleanse our political palate here at the end of the show, you mentioned at the very beginning that you were ASB president, which is student body president at MTSU. And in those days, the largest rival with Middle was the school on the plateau, Tennessee Tech, which will be the opening opponent for the Blue Raiders under Coach Derek Mason on August 31st, which is 39 days away, by the way. So, in those days, the level of the creativity in the rivalry was outstanding, and even during my days living in Smith Hall in 1981 and 82, there were things going on. But kind of give folks, because you and I talking on the phone a couple of days ago, there were just all kinds of creative stuff that happened.
There was just some amazing. We played for this totem
pole. Yeah. Harvey
or Shinny Ninny, as I think
they call it. Shinny Ninny. Yeah.
And so the winner of the football game got it, and then it was basically fair game to try to steal it.
Yeah.
So they had stolen it from us. We topped them by going, and we would get, I tell this stuff now, we would be in jail. We kidnapped their student body president and the editor of their newspaper. We brought them back. We went by a Burger Queen and saw that the Eagle was going to be there that afternoon, and we got him. And they both flew over each other's ball games and dropped some not so nice things out of airplanes.
Horse manure.
It was. Did they do that? No, we had these little squares made in the Smith Hall, the Smith Hall print shop. Yeah. that invited them to go somewhere that's not nice. but it was.
But it was hot. Wherever they were invited to, it was hot.
But it was really a fun rivalry. No one ever got hurt. We never messed up any property. But it was we turned a bunch of blue-dyed pigs loose in their grill at lunchtime.
Well, and I heard one of the stories that I heard was, as far as creatively stealing the totem pole, was that some ROTC guys from Middle went to Cookeville, and Tech had won it the previous year, and the totem pole, Harvey, was on display in Shinny-Ninny, as they call it, was on display in their bookstore. Mm-hmm. So these ROTC guys go up there and just walk in the bookstore and tell the bookstore manager, hey, the bookstore manager did not notice the MTSU patch on their uniforms, but said, hey, the president needs the totem pole for a publicity picture.
Yeah.
And so the bookstore manager just opened gave it to to top that even more, the ROTC guy says, I've had a little shoulder problem. Can you help us load it in the car? And so they loaded it in the car, and then they took off to Murfreesboro, and Harvey was stolen. But
I think one of those. Do you know who one of the leaders of that operation was? Dr. Jim Runge, as I recall.
Okay.
He's probably fixed a lot of people's bones here over the years, but yeah.
So there you go. And so the legend of Harvey and Shinny-Ninny continues, and it'll come back on August 31st. Kent, thanks for coming by, and hope that people learned something this hour.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good deal. If you missed any of this, the podcast will be on the podcast section of WGNSradio.com. Brian Barrett is standing by next, and we'll be back again next Wednesday with another interesting guest, and we'll tell you who that is later on in the week. So stick with us all day on the Big G, WGNS. Have a great afternoon.